At Crystal Beach, on the Canadian shore of Lake Erie, the only sound in the empty park is the sound of the wind screaming through the bare trees. The Comet coaster seems to shiver in the icy wind, as it has done for more than 35 years, quietly waiting for warmer times and the return of its riders. But for now, nothing moves in Crystal Beach. Well, almost nothing. Eventually, the long winter gives way to spring, and white changes to green at Crystal Beach. Walking around the Comet, you can almost feel the hum of anticipation through its structure, as if it knows that the year of the coaster is soon to begin. If this is the year of the coaster, it is also the year of the coaster enthusiast. Let's look in on one such enthusiast now, as he slumbers peacefully in the morning of his first ride of the season. Even though he hasn't ridden a coaster all winter, our enthusiast is cool. He doesn't hurry as he goes about preparing for the day. An occasional slight misstep is easily forgotten. Since he got up so early, he can take his time and have a pleasant drive along the byways and still get to the park well ahead of the crowds. He arrives to find Crystal Beach and the Comet ready and waiting for him. And the ride begins. The sounds of silence have been replaced by the screams of happy riders, for the year of the coaster is about to begin. Although the Crystal Beach Comet is 35 years old, a healthy age for any coaster, it has been well maintained and is in great shape to this day. Comet's awesome first plunge is one of the longest and steepest coaster drops anywhere. Since the Comet sits right along the edge of the lake, the view from its top is the best and scariest of any coaster. Many riders say they feel very exposed and have fears of being thrown into the lake. However, during the nearly 40 years the Comet has been running, that has never happened. What better way to kick off the season than with a front seat ride on the Crystal Beach Comet? See the world from 130 feet above Lake Erie, poised on the edge of that awful drop. Bet you can't wait to do it again. The year of any coaster can begin, some pre-season maintenance is needed. At Crystal Beach, this is done in spring before the park opens to the public. The Comet's usual 4-car trains are separated into 2-car sections and run like this for a while for less weight. Since it hasn't run all winter, the coaster is slow and often has to be pushed. With a little help from its riders, it barely inches around the first turn. On the second turn, however, no such luck. With a final thunk, it comes to a stop and everyone has to get out and push. It's all part of the fun. The Comet's spring break-in has become a yearly ritual for a few local coaster enthusiasts who come over for a rare backstage view of a coaster's operation. Some enthusiasts like marathon riding. They like to ride non-stop for long periods of time. Significant of all coaster marathons took place in June of 1978 at Virginia's King's Dominion. Certainly, the 14 riders who assembled here made the largest group of riders in any such event. Here also, for the first time, these hardcore coaster fans got a chance to meet each other. The marathon was sponsored by Universal Studios to celebrate the opening of the movie Roller Coaster. King's Dominion volunteered their Rebel Yell, one of the coasters seen in the movie. The goal was to ride longer than the current record of 72 hours and hopefully reach 100 hours. The Rebel Yell is a twin racing coaster. The marathoners rode on one track alongside the public on the other track. They stood in long lines for a chance to ride across from the marathoners, and by waving provided a welcome diversion during long hours on the ride. While the maintenance crew worked to keep the ride in good running condition, the riders caught a bit of shut-eye. One by one, contestants dropped out, leaving only the serious riders on the coaster. If you think the daytime hours were long, the nights passed twice as slowly. Once the park closed at 10 o'clock, only a two-man ride crew and a few weary riders were left to while away the hours. One compensation for all this was the quiet spectacle of sunrise over King's Dominion, as seen from the Rebel Yell's chain lift. In order to qualify as a Guinness World Record, one of the ride operators counted every hour we rode, and while this insanity was going on, the off-duty ride operators made their own sleeping arrangements. At 7 in the morning, it tended to be a bit nippy at 60 miles an hour. A nurse came out every 3 hours to check the marathoners' blood pressure. The main result of this was to disturb their sleep. Each morning, the maintenance crew walked the entire track to be sure the ride was safe to operate that day. By now, only 3 riders remained, yet the long ride continued. "101 hours after it began, the marathon ended in a blaze of publicity. News people came from everywhere to record the final ride and capture the triumph, as 3 riders would go down in history to share a new world record for roller coaster riding. It was all over but for signing autographs. Talks during the marathon resulted in the formation of a club for coaster hobbyists. During the years since the Virginia Marathon, the American Coaster Enthusiast has come a long way to over 1,000 members worldwide, and one of the best ways to celebrate each coaster year is to attend their annual convention. Like most coaster cons, the 1980 convention at Kennywood Park in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, featured lots of great riding on the park's 4 coasters, such as the fantastic Thunderbolt. One club member likes to get into some serious screaming. Lots of coaster enthusiasts take pictures, so camera lenses poked out everywhere. The surprise on the Thunderbolt is that the biggest drops are in a gully at the end of the ride.
Good times roll. Let the good times roll. Won't you let the good times roll?
A few of us were allowed to go out on the back turn while the coaster was running to get rare shots. It was a pretty dangerous place to be. The problem was there were only a couple of inches between someone walking and the speeding coaster train, and any collision between walker and rider would have been serious. The next conventioners rode another Kennywood coaster, the Racer. Here, two trains run alongside each other close enough for some handshaking from one to the other. The year of the Kennywood convention was indeed a good year for the coaster. But so was 1981. Once again, the coaster crazies were out, this time in Texas. We had every major coaster in the state, beginning with Six Flags in Dallas and their new wood coaster, Judge Roy's Scream. One of these coaster crazies gives his opinion of the Judge.
Enjoyed it very much, the front seat especially. It's a really exhilarating coaster. I started out this morning running on caffeine, and now I'm running on pure adrenaline.
And here's another rider's opinion. And for the ultimate in opinions, it's no wonder they call the ride Judge Roy's Scream.
Hey, how beautiful.
The management of Six Flags has always treated coaster enthusiasts well, and the club gave them a plaque in appreciation of a great weekend.
Take a little time just to try to find our man. Go back to the border.
While in Dallas, we also visited the state fairgrounds to ride a little-known classic, the Dallas Comet.
To the rock and roll, ain't heavy in the soul. Won't get back right away. Well, the girls I guess they're gonna call it Born Away. On the border grew with me.
The Comet is a vintage old John Miller design, and the upward force is so great at the tops of the hills that if you don't hang on, you could be flying the friendly skies ununited with your seat.
We're gonna call it Born Away. Born away, oh, we're born away. That's what they call it on now. Sitting with a loopy in the giggle cat.
It makes you wonder if there's someone up there saying, "Stick 'em up, partner."
Oh, but rock and roll, ain't heavy on the soul. Won't get back right away. When the girls are stealing record, cats are stealing. Guess they're gonna call it Born Away. Okay, born now. Well, if you try to take some order, sit on a beer, drink some Lone Star beer, and try to get your mind in order.
Even the ending of this ride has a surprise for the unwary. On the last day of the Texas convention, coaster fans wound up in Houston's Astroworld, home of the much-feared Texas Cyclone, only to find that it was stuck. It's sort of embarrassing when one of the world's fiercest coasters, a legend in its time, is, well, not moving. What happened was that someone packed too much grease into the wheel bearings. After fixing them and giving the train a good push, it ran fine. Of course, club members were eager to try it out. the employees decided they wouldn't have to push anymore, they came on down.
Hi, I was 6 years old when I rode the Texas Cyclone. And when I get to be 3 feet tall, I get to ride the back seat.
The back seat is extremely violent on this ride, and the size restriction is well advised. However, these coaster riders were having a ball wherever they rode. I asked an enthusiast what he would do after riding this coaster.
Clean my pants out.
Hey, that's one hell of a good coaster. I am wasted. That is just incredible.
Each year, someone takes a group photo of everyone who attends, and there's always someone who disrupts the proceedings, in this case, by a simulated ride in the Texas Cyclone. The 1982 convention was held at Hershey, Pennsylvania. Each morning of the convention, 2 coasters were running for registered members only before the park opened to the public.
It's been a whole year, and I'm finally 3 feet tall, and now I get to ride the back seat.
The enthusiasm of these people is something to behold. Hershey Comet is somewhat like the Crystal Beach Comet, being designed only a couple of years earlier by the same man, Herbert Schmeck.
I like the back seat because it's fast and fun.
Because you get pulled down the drops, the back seat is often the best ride the coaster can provide. There were a few unregistered guests at this convention. Hershey's steel looping coaster provided another good way to get airborne. Anyone know where the line for the coaster is? 1984 is a good year for coaster fans to become aware of the ride's history, because this year is considered to be the 100th anniversary of the coaster's invention. Ago at Coney Island, Lamarcus A. Thompson invented a device which he called the Switchback Railway. It proved to be so popular it was duplicated at many other parks. By today's standards, they were mild rides with gentle dips. A few years later, along came a phenomenon which swept the country, the figure-8 coaster. By the early 1900s, there were nearly 2,000 of these rides from coast to coast. Today, out of those thousands, only one remains. Leap the Dips at Lakemont Park in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Apparently all figure-8s were similar to this one, a simple layout shaped like an 8 with small dips at the points where the tracks crossed. They were side friction coasters with no under-track wheels because none were needed. These things have a strange 2-stage chain system driven by a secondary chain from a motor directly below the top of the lift. This coaster is a surprising amount of fun. This last survivor of a vanished age is certainly worth a visit by anyone who considers himself a coaster enthusiast. The chain breaks several times during an average day, but they just pound it together and it keeps on running. But it won't always be there running. It's the last one, and it's so vulnerable. You should ride it before it's too late. With the advent of safety track, coasters could be made higher and steeper, and the figure eights were phased out. During the 1920s, these newer coasters multiplied and there were over 1,000 of them. These were the days of the infamous beach twisters. Even looping coasters appeared at these shore resorts. But an age was ending. The years of some of these coasters ended when they were destroyed by natural causes like fire or flood. But most simply met the wrecker's ball. Of the hundreds of parks that once graced nearly every city and town in America, most have been turned into developments of other kinds. Others lie in silent, deserted ruins like Erie Beach, seen here a few miles downshore from Crystal Beach on Lake Erie. You get a strange feeling walking around this place, as if you can still hear the music of the carousel and hear the screams of the coaster riders. Of the coaster, only this cable anchor and a few cement footings remain. Of all the coasters ever built, more than 5 out of 6 are now gone. We lose more of these priceless rides each year. Of the many classic beach twisters that were once found at shore resorts, few remain. This one stood at Salisbury Beach, Massachusetts, until its year ended when the town decided it needed a larger parking lot.
Say goodbye to it all. That homeland of mine is beginning to crawl. Good.
Another great old beach coaster was the Skyrocket at Ocean View Park in Norfolk, Virginia. It was fast and very rough, and sailors from the nearby naval base found it a favorite.
Got a feeling we will meet again. When we return to paradise, the wind in our hair and the sun in our eyes. There's no need for tears and no time for lies. So reach out your hand.
During its last year, the Skyrocket was featured in several movies involving coasters. Once the filming ended, however, the coaster was destroyed. All that remains today is the silence. The ocean breeze seems to carry echoes of a time gone forever. Anyone who's been there will never forget the coasters at Pittsburgh's Westview Park. The Dips had one of the best back turns on any coaster. At the other end of Westview was the Racing Whippets, a dark double coaster in a hidden ravine. It was full of surprises, and everyone enjoyed the ride. It's gone now, torn down in favor of a new housing development. The Tornado at Coney Island, although overshadowed by its spectacular neighbor, the Cyclone, was no second-rate ride itself. It was one of the last remaining ultra-twisting coasters built by the great firm of Pryor and Church. Watching the sinuous movement of the beautiful articulated trains was almost as much fun as riding it. The Tornado was destroyed by fire, the fate of many a wood coaster structure. The South had some great coasters, too. One of the best was the Zephyr, a beautiful out and back located at New Orleans Pontchartrain Beach. Its year ended in 1984, coincidentally the year of the World's Fair. It was torn down. It was one of the only wood coasters in the Deep South, and it is sorely missed. More wood coasters disappear for the sake of progress. We must try to prevent the loss of any more of these wonderful rides. It was a bitter irony that in this centennial year of the coaster, we lost one of our very best wood coasters when the Wildcat at Idora Park in Youngstown, Ohio, was destroyed by fire.
When time comes that I have to, I do. When you go down that hill, you'll brace yourself.
I know.
No words could really describe this coaster. You simply had to have ridden it. Those who did ride the Wildcat nearly all claim the ride as one of their all-time favorites.
A long way down. Don't fall backwards.
The Wildcat roared into a special place in the hearts of us all. A violent, untamed ride, it punished its riders severely, yet it somehow had a way of making us feel better for having ridden it. No film record of this ride could ever really do it justice, but as a reminder of what once was, it is better than nothing. In 1984, the end came, in a blaze that silenced it forever. It was hard to go back to Idora and see the remains of the Wildcat just standing there quietly, like the charred bones of some dead creature. Oh, they had tidied up the area so the devastation wouldn't be so obvious, but the sadness could still be felt, for to the enthusiast, this coaster had become a friend. In the fall of this year, the remains of Idora Park were broken up and auctioned off to the highest bidder. If anything can be learned from all this, perhaps it is that enthusiasts can be brought closer by such a loss and can work together to prevent any further coasters and parks from becoming a memory. Many people say that of all the coasters that have come and gone over the years, the most legendary was the Crystal Beach Cyclone. Perhaps the ultimate beach twister, some say it was the greatest coaster of all time, while others would reserve that title. Most would agree that with its incredible series of tight spiral drops and violent turns, Harry Traver's Cyclone deserves to be known as the most frightening coaster ever. In this rare film of the Cyclone in operation, you can see for yourself. And so it goes. All is not lost, however, for the Cyclone's legacy lives on. In 1981, the German ride company of Anton Schwarzkopf borrowed the concept of Traver's famous spiral dip to come up with an up-to-date steel Cyclone of their own. I'm sure Harry Traver would smile now if he could see his famous spiral dip come back in a new Cyclone 50 years later. One of several Schwarzkopf looping stars in this country. It's the Jet Scream at Six Flags in St. Louis, Missouri. There's more. 2 years later, while the Jet Scream was humming along in Missouri, a new Cyclone was about to appear. The paint wasn't even dry on the brand new Cyclone at Riverside Park in Agawam, Massachusetts when it opened in 1983. In fact, part of the wood wasn't even painted. But that didn't matter, for when the year of this coaster began, coaster fans went wild, because for the first time in nearly 40 years, a new wood coaster had appeared that was worthy of being considered a descendant of Traver's original Cyclones. It's the only wood coaster with shoulder restraints. They were added because of the extreme nature of this ride. The Riverside Cyclone was designed by the modern-day coaster genius, William Cobb. Cobb also has a few other venerable coasters to his credit, including the Texas Cyclone a few years earlier. This is Cobb's wildest effort to date. Coming off the first spiral drop is like sitting sideways on the edge of a cliff. Hang on for your life. Even though the whole coaster is crammed into a couple hundred feet of space, it is over 100 feet high and it is fast. This ride is a monster. It's constantly trying to chew you up or fling you out. This zigzag turn is one of the most exquisitely violent moments to be found anywhere. Hopefully, there will be many years for the incredible Riverside Cyclone. For many coaster enthusiasts, being knocked around is part of the fun of the ride, and it's buns to the bulkheads as we see some hardcore riders tempting fate on the wildest rides they can find. Some riders, for example, like getting in a bit of airtime on the way down the first drop. While others like to bust buns on rides that are rough all the way down. Still others look for the curves that can bruise. And how about those amateur astronauts who aren't happy unless they're floating in space, free of any attachment such as their seat? This certainly comes under the heading of extravehicular activity. Riding like this is something like trying to bust a bronc at a rodeo. Or perhaps you prefer to just blow dry your hair at 50 miles per hour. And here's a guy who almost became a second Lone Star of Texas. Last, but by no means least, are the brakes. Sometimes they're the most challenging part of the ride. One homogenized human coming up. That look of pure pleasure on riders' faces tells it all. The best thing about all coasters is that riding them is fun. We last see our coaster enthusiast eating cotton candy as he stands in line for another ride. He knows the ride is worth the wait, as we all do. But as evening comes and the pace slows down a bit, we also think of those special moments when the coaster is transformed in the sun's last light, becoming not only a structure of wood and steel, but also an art form whose beauty we enjoy by simply watching. All too soon, the year of the coaster comes to an end. The chain is silenced one final time. In Great Lakes country, autumn comes early. After a brief blaze of color, only fallen leaves scurry along the pavement at Crystal Beach, borne on a blustery wind. All too soon, winter returns to claim her own. The Comet will lie dormant for months, mantled in white. This season is over, the year is done. But the Comet can wait, for it is one of the fortunate ones. For the Comet, there will be another year of the coaster.